look at something called the Red Lines memo, which is I think I have it near the top of my X account, or you can look for just the phrase Red Lines memo, and you will see Zelenszkij's first month in office, he was given a threat letter, effectively by the U.S. State Department, where they had something like 70 U.S.-funded NGOs who wrote a letter to Zelenszkij, ordering him not to cross the below-listed red lines, or else there will be political instability in your country. Now, political instability in the country caused by the U.S. State Department is the reason Zelenszkij ultimately became president. The 2014 coup in Ukraine was U.S. and U.K. orchestrated political instability to have a January 6th style mob destabilize the government and literally run it out of the country. And they gave him red lines on every single aspect of what he could do as president. Security red lines, cultural red lines, energy policy red lines.
What were these red lines, like cultural red lines?
So, for example, that he could not allow the use of Russian language to be aired on any of the major Ukrainian media channels. This was part of a drive by the U.S. State Department in tandem with the censorship work that started at that same time, in order to prevent the sort of affinity, the sort of Russian affinity network that happens because of Russian propaganda spreading from Russian language news sources, and to try to pry the country off of the Russian ethnic faction and have essentially the Ukrainian dialect.
This is in response for what happened in Crimea?
Yes, and Crimea and the Donbass, the whole eastern side breakaway. But this is effectively the long arm of Langley, the long arm of the State Department and CIA, telling Ukrainians that they can't, what kind of language they can use in their own country. Ukraine was effectively forced to transfer over its education ministry to an EU commissioning body so that Russian adjacent mythologies couldn't be taught in the country. They were told what industries they needed to privatize and to block any attempt to maintain sovereign control of those energy assets. This is ultimately what gave rise to the Burisma scandal, by the way, and the Hunter Biden State Department affairs that ran through all of that, which is a whole other fascinating topic, I should add. But the fact
I'd love
is,
to get back to that. Yeah.
But this is every aspect of Ukrainian society effectively top-down controlled by democratic institutions funded by the U.S. government, when it's stock standard that the only reason we do that, he who pays the piper calls the tune. They're being funded to exert this soft power issue, this soft power force on the Ukrainian government, and Zelenszkij knows that force, because the only reason he occupies the power that he does is because that force ushered him in through the sequence of events from Yatsenyuk in 2014 through up to him. And so the issue is those are the institutions. By the way, that whole thing was run through something called the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, which is effectively a suite of media institutions in the area that are CIA conduits, like the Kiev Independent, which is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. The National Endowment for Democracy is one of the most pernicious forces in the entirety of the censorship industry. And you were talking with Mark Andreessen about NGOs and their role in internet censorship. And, he was, I think, fleshing out sort of the concept of a GONGO, a government-organized, non-governmental organization.